podcast, hanging out with James MacDonald, founder and president of the Woodridge Mountain Bike Trail Support Foundation. How you doing, sir?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, mental health and mountain biking, two topics I like to talk about. So, yeah, I'm excited to learn more about what you're all about. Let's just start with the foundation. Let's talk about, what is it all about? What problem is it trying to solve?
Well, right now, we're a registered nonprofit organization with the Alberta government, and I would say our number one passion and goal is just to, open up about the importance of mental health and addiction recovery awareness, while also supporting, the benefits of mountain biking, including trails, right? The strength in community and friendship that you can get through mountain biking is quite special as a mountain biker yourself. I think you've had those moments and those rides where you're like, wow, this is living life, and I feel great and my energy levels are up here, and I want to share that stoke and share that energy and inspiration. So mountain biking personally, I think we'll get to that throughout the podcast, but mountain biking changed my life, right? And really was an amazing sport to get into, and now taking that inspiration and trying to help out the community as best we can. Right.
So for you, this sounds like it started as a personal journey, and now you're able to use what you've experienced in life. We were talking earlier about channeling your energy. So maybe let's talk about where this journey kind of started for you and how you were able to get to that point where you were able to channel your energy, first of all, to help yourself, and then second of all, to start helping others.
Correct. Yeah. And I appreciate you wanting to kind of go to the beginning, right? I think that's important, to why did this happen? Why am I, involved in this? Why are we as a team doing this? And, I've always been known to be very blunt and, kind of get back to, the biggest reason why this happened. And, that would start probably just over 10 years ago. I poured a bottle of vodka down the sink, right? A Tuesday at, noon after a 5-day bender. I don't even know, could have even been 6 days, was about to drive to work drunk still, and that's probably when it started. I started recovery. And, for anyone that's been through that, it's not easy, especially very early on. Yeah. And I think it was about 4 months into recovery. I had a friend of mine that, has just got a great vibe, great energy, just loves being outdoors, and, just randomly asked me if I wanted to go mountain biking one day. And I had like an old hardtail that, I maybe had rode around Fish Creek twice, right, on pavement, not on dirt. And I hooked, when loaded up the truck and shuttled to the top, probably went down a trail that wasn't ready for my bike yet, but it made it down. And, just the next day I'm, Googling and looking up new bikes, and I started a mountain bike, story and a mountain bike journey. And then I would say very early on, I started to recognize and focus that this mountain bike was a extremely helpful tool in recovery.
Okay.
It was this reminder of progress. Like we've talked about it in a few of our YouTube documentaries of how this mountain biking journey and the joy that was coming from it was this reminder of progress. Like, wow, like I'm improving my physical health, which then leads to improving your mental health.
Yeah.
And I'm struggling up this climb, but this is worth it because currently, I'm enjoying and I'm proud of this progress.
Right.
So it really connected to recovery for me. It was like, hey, this mountain biking is like my tool of recovery, and it continued. And I ended up, traveling, to mountain bike, and then, would then tie in, like, hey, where else is this relatable to my life,
Yeah.
right? And I think it was setting me up, whether it was, meant to be thing, or, a universe connected thing, like for resilience, because I had, one of the hardest days in 2017, losing my father to cancer, and he was very connected to recovery himself as well. There was like this father-son recovery story that was happening, and he got to see his son, it start and continue in recovery, right? And I think, after going through grief and stuff like that, it was also like, okay, well, how do I continue with this father-son recovery story? And then one day I just came up with a fundraising idea to honor my dad, and open up about mountain biking, and open up about recovery and how it had improved my life, right? And then that's how the WoodridgeMTB Trail Support Foundation started. Was I want to open up and give back to a sport that had improved my life, but also could be connected to this father-son recovery story, and I can honor my father, right, and keep his name alive, right?
So you mentioned, and I love the fact that, like, what I love about mountain biking, just as far as how it can help, is even in the wintertime, I'm motivated to stay in relatively good shape, because I know that when I start climbing on the bike, it's gonna really suck if that's my first day of getting into shape. You know what I mean? Like, I'd rather be in shape to mountain bike than use mountain biking to get into shape. Correct. So it's like this constant like motivation to kind of be like, okay, I know kind of where my baseline needs to be. I want to ask you though, before we get into kind of the biking and the foundation, you mentioned that, so 10 years ago you poured a bottle of vodka down the sink. Why did you do that?
That was, if you talk to me personally, I did that because it was my rock bottom. And I think if you talk to some people who have experienced recovery or experienced their own rock bottom, you have the old cliche, like a light just went off, and it did for me. It was like time just completely slowed down and stopped. I could remember like looking at that bottle of vodka, about to pour a very, stiff drink, at noon on a Tuesday and start driving. Time just completely slowed down, and in my mind it was like, no, I cannot continue down this road, right? This is beyond self-destructive. I have a problem. I need to change my life. I'm not doing this, and just poured it down the sink. But, what happened in probably, 3-5 seconds literally felt like a minute, 2 minutes, like time just completely stopped and slowed down. And it was like, no. And I, my dad, again, had a very powerful, connection with recovery himself, and he was in helping others in the community. And it's the first phone call I made, said, hey, I need help, right? I'm it's time to put the drinking away permanently.
When you had that moment of, I'll just call it a moment of clarity, or like you say, time standing still, and you realize, was it at that point then, did it become easy for you to kind of change your life, or was it kind of was there the need to kind of constantly remind yourself, like, okay, this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm doing it?
Yeah, at first, no, it was not easy, because you're lost, right? You're living with a lot of regret on decisions that you'd made in the past. Also fear, right? What are, at the time, your current friend circle, what are they going to be like when you're out with them in public and not, drinking, and, at what point do I open up about it and say, hey, like, I'm proud of this decision. This is the way I'm going, right? At first, it's extremely difficult, because there's a lot of like the fear of the unknown, right? And you'll have the self-doubt of, am I capable of doing this, right? I'm sure there's, depending on the substance, there's many people that have tried, many, many, many times, right? And faltered backwards, right? And then again, to our previous conversation earlier, I'm very grateful that a friend called me and said, "Hey, let's go mountain biking," because that mountain biking became that constant reminder of progress. And that's, I think, when it became easier, was it was very clear, like it was very present, like, look at this progress, the physical health, the mental health, right? Financials, right? Other than the going out and spending the money on the bikes and the parts, which became an early addiction itself, but like a healthy addiction. But it was like, look at the progress, like the way I can communicate with people, right? I can feel my emotional intelligence increasing. I can, connect with people that I probably couldn't connect with before because I was very self-destructive, right? Or, thinking I'm being, humorous and kind, right, when I'm drunk, but I'm not. I'm being, ignorant, and I'm, not, being obnoxious. That's not who I truly am, and I never want to go back to that. Right. And so the mountain biking made it so much easier.
So you go from realizing that mountain biking is helping you, you're motivated to then use it as a means to help others?
Correct. Yeah, so that came full circle in 2021. At that point, I was approaching, I want to say, in and around 6.5, 7 years of recovery, and was like, you know what, I want to give back now. Whether it was like a slight moment of like guilt that I had never, shown up for a trail day or helped rake a trail, or, I'd maybe bought one membership at a local trail association, right? And showed up to one AGM and kind of didn't talk to anybody, just kind of sat there, just by myself, and like, okay, well, this is, maybe something one day I could help out with, but I wasn't there yet. And it was just a moment of, you know what, I want to give back. I want to open up. I found a way to improve my life. Maybe there's a story to be told here. Maybe this is also a way to honor my dad, keep his name alive, right? And, eventually tell this really powerful story of a father-son in recovery at the same time, but also continue it, right? For anyone that's lost a loved one, you always have that, are they still with us, right? And I really kind of bought into that early on, like, this is happening because, our loved ones are still with us, right? And they help you along the way, right? And help you, guide you down, a road that can, shift left to right, and make sure that, they're with you and helping you along the way. So I really bought into that, and I bought into that early. And that's kind of how it started.
Yeah.
It didn't, nothing, small ideas don't instantly turn into bigger things. It takes time, it takes effort. And it really just started as a small fundraising idea to raise $500.
Yeah.
And give it to a local trail society that, does amazing work in this province. And there's, the closest to my home, so that's where I rode my bike. It was an easy decision. And then, just through friends, and said, hey, who do I reach out to in this community? And then a friend would be like, oh, we talk to that guy. He's like the legend, right? Yeah. So my, friend got me in touch with, at their time, a vice president of the association, and now to date, he's one of my mentors, right? And it was just, it was a good moment when we started out, and the story goes from there. It gets pretty wild. So that was back in 21. So
you mentioned your dad a couple of times, and you mentioned that your dad was helping people. I think you had said helping people kind of through their recovery and stuff like that.
Correct.
When you think back, because I think about, some of the things that my dad did when I was a kid, and how just observing him kind of helped me get to, where I am, say, as an entrepreneur and stuff like that. So when you think back to what your dad did, just watching him do that and watching him help people, was that something that motivated you to do the same?
You know what? That's a really good question, and I appreciate you asking that. I've never even thought of that. I think for me, to keep it simple, I was extremely becoming very proud of my dad and his recovery journey, knowing what it's like, you know, and actually not having to think about it, but you have to experience it and feel it. So, you know, within that first year of recovery, when my dad was still around, right, it was like this almost admiring his journey, admiring the efforts he's made, because I've now fully experienced how difficult it is.
Yeah.
And then knowing that my dad was helping out in his own way, right, which helped him throughout his recovery, right? And I had a completely different approach to it through mountain biking, right? How do I integrate, you know, kind of the efforts that, you know, my dad had in his own light and the efforts that I would like to put out in my own light? How do I connect the dots? And that's kind of probably some of the motivation that helped me start, hey, I want to give back and, you know, start a fundraiser and connect these dots and, you know, have this family story recovery and my dad's name involved in some light. Right. It's a really good question, but I don't think there was ever like certain moments or things that my dad was doing in the community that was like, well, I want to do that. Right. It was like, I want to keep this father-son recovery story alive and honor my father, you know, and also, you know, take this newfound passion to open up about recovery and the, you know, my mountain biking journey, right, and move forward with it to see where it would go to help others. Again, it just started as a fundraiser to raise $500, $1,000. It wasn't off the gate, okay, well, I want to help people in recovery. It grew to that point, right? And it took a while to connect where those dots would go or how they would align. It didn't happen right away. Like there was, we can get to it through the podcast here, but there was a defining moment that connected. This is how we can help as a fundraiser, as an organization. Here's how I can personally tell a story to help others. And that did happen at the end of 2021.
Yeah, because I'm curious. So let's talk about that, because I'm always curious how something starts and then how it evolves. So what was that defining moment where things kind of evolved?
Yeah, I would say the defining moment was when I reached out to a friend and said, who was a big supporter in the foundation and our team at the time, and was, you know, donating memorabilia and sports memorabilia for our online auctions, right? And his wife is an addictions counselor.
Okay.
So I said, hey, I'm having a tough time finding the connection that just aligns, right? And it wasn't an easy connection. Like, here's a guy stoked on bikes, stoked on recovery, right, with an amazing team of support that we're helping out, and we're new to it and excited, and we're, you know, trying to make these YouTube videos of us riding bikes, and, you know, got drone flyers and YouTube, and like we're like, you know, we're kind of caught up in the excitement of it. How does this align with helping people in recovery? We're raising money, donating to the trails. That makes sense, right? We're giving back to the sport of mountain biking that improved our life. That's a great way to do it, right? And again, I reached out to my friend, and his wife said, Alpha House. She's like, go. They take volunteers all the time, right? They're always looking for help. It's a great organization, right? And I'm like, great. So I just sent them an email, right? And introduced myself, included a couple of our YouTube videos, and said, hey, I'd like to contribute somehow, and, you know, I could raise some money for the Alpha House, but I'd also like to be involved. And they replied back in an email almost immediately, like, hey, thanks for reaching out. Cool videos. I don't really know how it aligns with us, but very cool videos. And I just love their straight honesty.
Yeah,
like, it's just real. Like, you know, I'm like, yeah, good point. Like, I don't know either.
Yeah.
And they said, but thank you. We, you know, appreciate your support, and offered a tour. They're like, would you like a tour of the Alpha House? And immediately I'm like, yes, absolutely. So that was the defining moment, right? It started with walking into the shelter. I had never seen anything like that in my life.
Yeah, you know? Talk about it.
I'm happy to. Tuesday, 1 o'clock-ish, right? 80 to 100 people in a dark, you know, what is just, you know, concrete wall and warehouse, you know, on blue mats, you know, just out of it, right? Suffering from, hard substances. It was very real. It was a 2x4 of reality of how bad addiction is. And I walked through that warehouse, all ages, I can't put an exact number on it, but if I had to give you a range, anywhere from 16 to 80 plus people on a Tuesday afternoon out, or just coming out of whatever substance they're trying to kick, or they needed to go to where they could get some help if it's just one night or a safe place to sleep. And one thing I noticed early in this tour was how happy the staff were. They were just this aura of light and happiness and, like love, right? They were just happy to be involved in helping in this cause, right? And again, I had never experienced anything like this in my life. I'd, been to San Diego. I've, had been to Vancouver. I'd never been into East Hastings. I do have East Hastings stories if we get to there on the podcast. But it was a 2x4 of reality of how bad and raw addiction is in the city. And then I was asked to come upstairs. So would you like a tour, continue the tour of the detox and recovery facility? And absolutely. And that was the defining moment. I knew within 30 seconds of walking into the Alpha House Detox Recovery Facility, this is where I can help. So it's a room that has, medical, it has staff. People are very early into recovery. You could tell, like, this is where it starts. This is detox, right? They had, recovery videos playing on the TV. They had staff, playing around, playing bingo with their clients, right? Trying to build some community and team camaraderie and have them, involved. And I didn't know the details of how that, detox recovery facility worked, but I just, I felt in my gut. I'm like, okay, this is where I can help.
Yeah.
And that's where it started.
Okay.
And but yeah, maybe continue on because this story gets quite wild. So.
No, keep going, man. It's your story. I'm just here to listen. I love it, man.
So I had always had a connection to football, and I love playing fantasy football. And one of the most cherished memories I have and will always have of my dad and I when we were in recovery is we went to a football game down in San Diego and watched the Bears and Chargers. And I'm like, you know what? Like, I've integrated the mountain bike passion into, this fundraising idea. And, it wasn't a foundation at that time. And maybe I can integrate football, right, into, a fun party-like atmosphere, in the detox recovery facility. So chose to have a fantasy or a Super Bowl party for detox and recovery, and obviously have a moment to open up about my own personal journey and recovery. And it was a huge success. Like, it was overwhelmingly, special to me by the end of it. We had 48 detox recovery clients having just this crazy excitement of cheer and energy and having so much fun.
Yeah.
And not even like at the moment they probably thinking of where they currently are in this darkness and like feeling lost. Like, they just had this stoke and this energy. And I talked about mountain biking and the mountain bike stoke, and then by the end of it, you could hear comments like, oh man, I never knew you could have so much fun without drinking and the drugs that they would mention some of the drugs that they'd been struggling with. Like, thank you. Like, I had so much fun. Like, I love the stoke. What's the stoke, right? I'm like, well, that's what you're feeling, right?
Yeah.
Like, the stoke can be not just through mountain biking, right?
Yeah.
It was very real. And after that, left. I got in the elevator. I had brought a bunch of football stuff with me, and went down to my truck, and I'll be honest, I just wept.
Yeah.
Just cried. I'm like, this started something, right? And I knew that, as an individual and as a team at that time, I think we had maybe 4 people on this fundraising team, and said, if we're going to continue down this road, right, this can't just be a fundraiser, right? It has to have, you know, an identity. It has to be registered, right? And then the next day I was Googling nonprofit, right? It was time to, you know, register this fundraising idea as, you know, an organization, an entity, a nonprofit society, right? And then, started that journey.
I love that.
Yeah.
So how do you raise funds then?
We have different channels, and we're trying new channels as well as the story, you know, kind of continued and grew. Very early on, just human connection, just phone calls, calling people that, you know, had known me most of my life, right? Had known me either through work or had known, you know, through, James's mountain bike journey. As a team, you know, as the organization grew, we decided to like, okay, well, we need to expand. So let's do some fundraising through 50/50s instead of every single year asking for personal donations. We were very fortunate to have a few different moments. We were talking earlier about Graham and One for the Road Brewery, where someone would be like, hey, wow, I'm inspired by what you're doing. I want to raise money for your organization. And it's very heartwarming to hear that, right? Where your efforts and your passion are recognized and someone's like, hey, I love what your organization is doing. I want to raise money for your organization.
Yeah.
Instead of the pressure of the people within the organization are the ones that have to raise all the money to give the organization. Like, it is nice to have that support, you know, come from, you know, the people being inspired by what you're doing, going like, hey, I love your organization. I love what you stand for. I love why you're doing this. I want to support you. I want to help you, you know, and every nonprofit organization, right, at some point needs to fundraise. Yeah. You can take breaks, but there's times where you're like, hey, well, we need to fundraise so we can continue to, you know, help out. Right, in the community and, you know, try to do good things, right? So we have different channels. Right now, obviously, we'll probably get to it on the podcast. We have a monster project that came to life just recently, and I look forward to talking about that.
Let's talk about it right now.
Yeah, so, you know, throughout the nonprofit journey and, you know, registering as the nonprofit organization, I'll kind of get to, you know, how this project came to be, right? And it, like another moment of clarity that came in for me in 2022 was, you know, going as hard as I could, and the team, and going as hard as we could to, you know, raise funds to give to different trail associations and organizations, I think was starting to take a toll. And there was a moment where in October of 2022 where I realized that long term it wasn't sustainable to be calling every one of our friends and our loved ones and say, hey, we're raising money and we're giving to these different organizations. Don't get me wrong, that's all lovely and it's amazing and it helps, you know, on so many levels. But for those that have worked in nonprofit, there is also that side of, okay, well, I'm volunteering my time and my energy towards this. Like, I have a full-time job, right? Relationship. And for me personally, I was so focused on the nonprofit organization, and I was channeling almost all of my energy towards this nonprofit organization, and I was not slowing myself down, right? And recognizing what also is important, right? Needs balance, right? And I didn't know what it was, and I had a really very difficult weekend. And a friend of mine, Tyler, we were having coffee one day. He's like, I know exactly what you experienced that weekend. This is called compassion fatigue. And it was a very difficult weekend. One of those weekends where it was just down, everything, you know, situational anxiety. My mental health was awful, right? I was like, what am I doing, right? Almost like an imposter syndrome, going like, this isn't sustainable, right? Like, how do I align all these stars and these dots to even greater purpose, right? Where you can build something even more meaningful, towards the future. And eventually I kind of landed at, like, I'd like to build a trail and dedicate it to my dad.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So the idea comes to you, you want to put your energy towards something specific like that. How do you then, what's the next step? Where do you decide to build the trail? Why? How does that all come together?
You know what? It didn't come together quickly. I called my mentor and said, "Hey, I think I have an idea."
Yeah.
Right. And, in immediate encouragement, like, yes, absolutely. Like, I'd love to be a part of that. Right. And immediately you're trying to figure it out still. Like, you have this idea, right? And knowing that idea is going to take time, right? And it's going to take effort. It's going to take time. It's going to take organized strategy. And at the moment, it was just an idea. At the end of 2022, and I made some phone calls. Said, how much would this cost? I have no idea. I've never built a trail. I don't even, know what the process is.
Right.
And obviously you have friends that are very experienced to be like, okay, well, it's not just a matter of raising some funds and taking a shovel. Like, you have Alberta Parks, Forestry, Ministry, right? And and eventually you kind of go like, okay, well, maybe in time. There was never like this defining moment where in early or late 2022 and early 2023, it was like, okay, this is the plan. This is where it's going to be. It was just an idea, right? Obviously, we had ideas of where it could be or should be. And then, there was this overwhelming, like, symmetry and connection with a mountain biking community that's out by the Rocky Mountain House area, Cow Lake area, called Baseline Mountain Biking Club. And the connection was more than just, here's some people that are just stoked on bikes, right? Like, they had a very strong connection to mental health advocacy. Their president was, has his own journey, right? Very involved in caring for mental health, had his own, kind of recovery story. And sometimes you just get these connections and you recognize this symmetry that's developing, or you're aware of it, and you kind of just like watch it grow, like a friendship or relationship, and you feel it. You don't even have to think sometimes. You just have this symmetry connection. And I felt like our organizations were very connected. We have a very strong core value of support those that support you. And, when we needed support and we were doing these different things, and, within the community, like, this community they were there. They were just supporting, right? And that's a nice connection to have. And we just kind of, watched and felt this connection developing. And then I'm going to sound crazy with the Legacy Trails project, because it didn't happen by plan, really. It was more or less like right moment, right time, with the right people in the perfect spot that truly felt like, okay, this is purpose, this is destiny, right? And that happened in June of 2023. I had slowed down the idea of building trails, and just like, why don't we just start with a dedication bench to my father, right? And maybe down the road, wherever this bench is going to be, right, we could maybe put a trail in and around the area, over the next 5-10 years, right? And what I can only describe, the way I look at it, and I'm not shy about it, for me, just a destiny, existential moment, like a meaning, a true landing of this is where it was all supposed to, end, start, continue, happened on, June of 2023. We're riding a trail I had never ridden in my life, right? And with some friends that are, very connected to the WoodridgeMTB Trail Support Foundation and this Baseline mountain biking community. And we stopped at this unobstructed panoramic view, my friend behind me started talking about how this place needs a bench. And I was just like, don't get me wrong, I was like, it was special, but I was freaked out. I had just talked about it with one person 2 days before this moment. And that's how the Legacy Trails project started. And then, 2 days later, got, the right people on the phone, said, we need to have a conversation.
Wow.
And it was submitted to Alberta Forestry, Parks, Ministry. It landed within, they had to, get their plans in for the next 5 years within 2 weeks of this moment happening. And in June of 2020 or June of 2024, it was approved.
Wow.
And it was special, right? And I don't tear up on a podcast, but it was, everything kind of came full circle. Whether it was recovery, the efforts within the foundation, what we were doing within the Alpha House, their connections within the community, the friendships, the struggle, growth comes from hardship, and all of it just is this is it. This is a super meaningful project that could inspire thousands for years, right? And the idea, and it is now concrete, is to build 2 trails and dedicate both trails, or one trail to mental health awareness and addiction recovery awareness. Obviously, in a creative way, we'll find a name for these trails once they're built. And we are currently we launched and talked about the Legacy Trails project in a very creative way of October of 2024, and we look forward to kind of getting started again, in late spring and summer, and our story continues.
So how long does a trail? I was just writing some names down as you were telling that story, because I have a friend, Colin Ryan, who they are out at Fallen Timber Meadery, and in and around their property, they're looking to cut some trails. I think they've started, and I'm just curious, so for you, how long is this? Do you expect this to take?
You know what? That's a great question, because we're just very early on in launching the approval, and we, not to get off topic, but I think it's important to talk about, we knew about the approval for a while, right? And we knew that there was a good chance it was going to be approved in between June 2023 and when it was approved on June 20th of 2024.
Right.
But we felt that this is an entirely new experience for us.
Mm-hmm.
There's no playbook for the WoodridgeMTB Trail Support Foundation team. We've never done this before.
Right.
And let's let things develop, right? Mm-hmm. And let's trust the process, right? And feel that we don't have to rush anything, and stick to our core values, and work towards this launch in a very creative way that just fits. Right. And we did that, and we're currently kind of in that motion of, hey, we kind of want to have X amount fundraised before we commit to the build, right? Here's maybe a time frame that we would like the build to maybe start, but with no concrete date. Let's make sure that we've done our due diligence. We are not going to put us in a difficult situation on funding, right? We're confident that we've communicated as a team well, and that we believe we're ready to book a builder to do at least one of the trails. Right. For those that have worked on a major project, right, I think you can agree it's nice when time is on your side and you don't have a hard deadline. So to answer the question directly, we're at the moment not completely sure how long it will take. However, I can communicate that as a team, we are confident that ground might be broken in 2026, right? Which to us is that's special. That's, to be able to potentially break ground, a couple years after, the actual approval came through, right? Would be a moment of, accomplishment and celebration for us.
And so then do you have to continue to raise money just for that project to take place? Is that part of the process, is to continuously raise money for that?
Absolutely. To be honest, I don't think it'll ever truly end, because you have trail maintenance, right? You may want to, host events related to, the inspiration of the Legacy Trails project, right? The funds have to be there, right? And I'm currently in a position, and the team, we are in a position where we know that we have to be very strategic and know that, fundraising is going to take time. It's going to be continuous, and things are going to come up. We're like, okay, well, we as an organization, we need funding for this now. So hence why we're not trying to rush through it and be very strategic on when it starts.
Yeah.
Right. But so far we had we kind of a soft launch of fundraising that happened for, kind of periodically through 2024, even behind the scenes. We as a team were kind of like, hey, this might be coming, this might get approved. Would you, want to be a part of this story? Would you want to contribute in some way? So I believe that we as a team are going to start up fundraising again in, March or April. I think you can relate to this one. This is all a very, it's a good story. It takes a lot of effort, right? But sometimes when, you need to take a step back and realize that, I need to take a break from something for a bit to focus on my own mental health, right? And I've had to do that personally myself, where it's like, hey, I need to take a moment. I need to recharge. I need to refocus. I need to, get stronger on these aspects from these lessons that I've learned, and take a moment, be like, you know what, my mental health isn't exactly where it is right now, or it needs to be there as a leader, to be there for a team, to be there for myself, right? And that I experienced that in a very, very difficult way at the end of 2024, and currently, recharging and kind of getting that passion back a little bit, but making sure that, you can take time. You can take time to focus and care for yourself as well, and learn from, some mistakes, right? Of not, channeling, other purposes into your life, right? And finding that balance. I think we had a great conversation, even just via text, like, what you asked a great question, like what helps you find balance in your life, right? And like that. So,
well, and I'm reading the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and Habit 7. It's been out for 30 years, so this isn't really a spoiler alert, but it is, sharpening your saw. So I think that's part of what you're doing right now, is when you take that step back to take care of yourself, whether that's mental, physical, spiritual, you're sharpening that saw so that when you approach the project again, you have that much more clarity and passion to do it right. And if
Absolutely.
you're continuously just kind of grinding yourself down, that's going to be gone, and you may not be able to recover from that, right? So
totally. And I appreciate you saying that, because it's recharging, right? And for anyone that's been on as a leader or on a leadership journey, right, like, you need to be there for yourself, but you need to be there for your team. Like, these are amazing human beings that are connected to what we believe in, the importance of mental health and addiction recovery awareness, right? This inspirational mountain biking project, right? Like, we need to be there for each other, right? And if you lose sight of, focusing on your own health and constantly just, okay, well, I'm this for others and this for others and this for others, eventually at some point there's like this breaking point, right? Like, you just kind of crack. And that happened. That happened to me at the end of 2024. Everything just came full circle, right? And just broke down, right? Through recovery, you build up resilience. So I'm very fortunate that I've committed to recovery, because, after this, this crack and this kind of mental health breakdown, right, the next day I'm like, okay, I don't want to feel like that consistently. what am I doing to change this?
Right.
And then that's when the need to take a step back, recharge. I chose to commit to, a very dedicated physical health, right? No excuses, showing up for exercise every day. I think you and I can both relate to this. We're both very active, right? The importance of integrating physical health to help support your mental health.
Yeah,
right. So
absolutely. It's yeah, I think of myself as like a dog. I need to be walked every day, or else I go crazy. You know what I mean? So, I think there is just such an important connection there between the mental health and the well, I think mental, physical, spiritual, like it's all connected. You know what I mean? And like you talk about Stoke, I think of certain memories I have of biking. Where you're just in this flow state, and it's like all three of those components are coming together, and it's like I could just chase that, and that doesn't have to happen through biking. It could happen through anything, but just to be in that perfect state is really good. But that means taking care of yourself, mind, body, and soul, right?
Correct. And that is like being completely present, right? And that's one thing that's amazing about mountain biking. And
as soon as you're not present, you're off
you're into
the bike.
the tree.
Yeah.
Trust me. There's been many rides where James MacDonald is like thinking about what I'm gonna have for lunch, and then I'm into a tree. Like there's a running joke within our team, like how many trees is James gonna hit this year?
Yeah.
So I do crash a lot, right? And maybe it is because I lose. I'm not as present. You can't really break focus and going full downhill on a mountain bike, right? But that whole like spiritual energy, being present, mental health, physical health, and mental health. Like we have a few people on our team, right? That this is the Legacy Trails project to them. Like it combines all of it. It truly is in this unbelievable spot and view, and there's just, for me, like on that trail, I always kind of feel a presence, like an energy there, and you get that physical activity. It's relatable for me and a lot of people on our team, and hopefully, as this story continues, a lot of people to, this is also a project that just relates to the energy, the mental health, the story of, what's possible in recovery while getting physical exercise in nature. Like it has this perfect symmetry of so many things that are inspirational, right?
Well, the biggest thing too is it's not just the biking. It's like where I think will be a really interesting part of the process, part of the journey will be the actual physically building of the trails. I think that will be something like, you've mentioned the word community a lot of times. That I think that, and I'm really wanting to talk more about that and see how I can get involved, because I think that's going to be a shared experience, that when you guys bike it for the first time, it's just, it's something that, and if you've ever had a shared experience with a group of people, there's just something that it can't be articulated. It's a feeling that you will all have. And I think that that to me, it will be a really cool part of the process. You see that bench sitting there, you see the trail, every single thing that got cut out, who did it, you see all the pictures. That's going to be really cool. And that's wait. Just the making of the trail, you know what I mean? So there's so many components there.
Yeah, and I'm thanks for saying that, because that's, I've maybe thought about that briefly before. Obviously, when you take as a team and as an organization, like, don't get me wrong, we're excited, but we don't have a playbook. Like we're nervous too, right? And but we talked about this earlier when we're sitting outside having coffee, like these reminders of why we're doing this, why we're trying to, normalize the conversation of the importance of mental health awareness and addiction recovery, right? And like just this podcast and talking to you is that reminder of like, because you can feel it. You're like, this is why I do this. Yeah. And you're dead on. Like that moment or those days or those, with the being involved with the people in the community who are, passionate and want to see this project, come to life, right? Having those moments and being present in that is just going to be really special. And watching, the trail builder, build. Like I'm a bit of a geek. I love flying a drone. Like even just being out there and, socializing and flying my drone and, catching up with the trail builder and, and helping out. Like, hey, we're going to go move some dirt, like just get some
awesome.
physical activity. I can't wait. Like I got chills.
Oh, it's going to be awesome. So we talked about community, but also when I was stalking you online, looking at your website, you have a really good team. And it's one of those things where, I don't know, and maybe you can tell me, can you intentionally build culture, or is culture something that you just look and be like, how the hell did this team come together?
Wow.
Maybe talk about what your culture is and how you got to that point.
What a good question. You know what? There's, again, when you start out, there's no playbook, right? You can try to read as many books as you can and try to have this, strategy in place. You learn as you grow, right? And one thing that I've always been very proud of within our organization and our team is appreciation and reminding these special connections and friendships that, hey, we really appreciate you. I really appreciate you, right? And I think once you develop that trust, that friendship, that appreciation, this amazing relationship grows within individuals as a team, right? And eventually you, as a group and as, kind of a hive mind, you buy into what we believe in, and you buy into the passion behind this. Like you find, value in being a part of this community. You at one point, and it's another conversation, you kind of always start with, well, this is why I do this. But then you kind of, and I've done it me personally, lost sight of why, right? And sometimes you just need that refresh or that recharge, restart, and why we're doing this. And I think as a team, if you lead by inspiration, right, you trust that process and chemistry of, value and appreciating each other, right? A team can grow and a team can do very special things.
Yeah.
Right. And by all means, we are not perfect. We've had our faults. We've, lost sight of, valuable things, but we are always very aware that, like, hey, we need to get back to, our core values and why, and be proud of what we've accomplished thus far. Yeah. Not always chasing, hey, we got to get to here and then we've accomplished what we were after. Like there's these, small team accomplishments, right? And I think our team has had a few of those, or, and we have that sense of team camaraderie and team pride. And, I mentioned it in one of the YouTube videos made by a friend of mine, Tristan Proctor, it's called Spinning Forward on YouTube. And special project that we did for this small documentary, and I think there's one line in there that just came very naturally, and he may have asked, what's your favorite thing about the foundation right now, and my instant answer was team chemistry. Like watching that team chemistry develop, right, where there's these just amazing individuals that have their own stories, right? And we are a great organization. We're a great team, but some of these individuals that are on these teams, like they've gone down their own, falls and had to pick themselves up, and build their strength and connect again with community. Like, I'm not the only recovery story on our team, and sometimes that recovery is not just addiction. Yeah, it can be mental health, right? Like, recovering from a very, very, dark time and dark days, through trauma in your life. And I guess we have this, connection of, like, we're there to support each other because we also know what we as individuals have been through to get to where we are currently, and we're proud of each other and we support each other, right? And we have, a common resilience, and we want to do good together. So yeah, man, I'm so happy you asked that question, because team and that symmetry it's special, and it's probably one of the major reasons why, like, the WoodridgeMTB Trail Support Foundation is where we are today. 2021, it was a fundraising idea to raise $500. 3.5 years later, we're looking to build 2 mountain bike trails and have the support, Alberta Forestry Ministry. We're a registered organization with the Alberta government, 15 to 16 team members.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it's been a wave.
It's awesome. Yeah. You've mentioned mentors a few times in our conversation. So how important has that been for you to have mentors? And is it something that you've always had, or is it something, I guess, is it something you've always had? Is it something you were conscious about, or is it something you just realized after the fact, like, oh, this person is my mentor?
You know what? It just develops naturally. Like, I didn't start out with, hey, got this fundraising idea, want to find a mentor. Right. It's never like that. It's along the journey and along the road, you make these connections or have these incredibly strong friendships where every conversation you have has just so much good and progress from it, right? You're very relatable. You can talk about, future goals, right? There's, no discomfort in the conversation with, like, right, hey, I'm struggling here. Or what would you think if, what do you think of this idea? And this friend sitting across from you was like, that sounds great, but what if you looked at it this way? And they are there to help, guide, encourage, and, just truly be there in full, organic, authentic support. And I think you just come to this realization that, like, wow, this individual is a huge part of my life, right? They're a huge part in helping the team's passion, right? The organization. That person is a mentor to me, because I have learned so much from them, and they are also learning and being inspired by, our conversations, right? And you can see it, and when they put it back into their own leadership journey or into the community, you can just kind of see it, right? Leaders just sometimes connect, right? They have this passion of leadership, and I've found that with like 2 mentors for sure that are just, like, huge part of my life. Huge part of my life. Yeah.
So would you say, when you look at where you are and what you're doing, is there, I don't know if it's a guiding principle or if it's a mantra or if it's something that just, that kind of you come back to if you're having troubles, an idea?
You know what? It's definitely, yes, absolutely. It's a great question, and the answer is yes. Because, used for an example, like, so my mom is my only parent around, right? And my mom has a lot on her plate. So, yes, I communicate, with complete honesty and everything with my mom. But when stuff I'm not at my best or feeling confident, like, I don't want to worry a parent, right? They have enough to worry about, right? And I find that when you have a mentor, right, you have that safe place where you can go to, where it said, hey, I'm struggling, or that idea I'm thinking about, what about this way, right? And I have no fear that I'm going to worry my mentor about my own well-being. Right. They're there for you, right? Don't get me wrong. Like, your family is there for you as well, but, it's my mom. She's probably worrying about me when she doesn't need to worry about me, right? Totally. And having a mentor, like, is like family as well, but it's just one of the best and healthiest places that you can go to be like, I need guidance, I need help, right? Like, you just have that connection. You learn from them. Like, you have that, a safe place to, open up about your struggles, open up about your mental health. Like, I have, gone to both my mentors and just told them flat out, like, hey, like, had a bit of a breakdown, right? And then they're there to be like, sorry to hear that. What do you, and explain to, here's what I'm doing to get back to where I need to be. And they're there to encourage you. Yeah. And also be there for you. Right. So yeah, 100%. I recommend a mentor to everybody. It's funny, really do.
When when you talk about, not sometimes wanting to confide in your mom, not because, she'll definitely care. Yeah. But sometimes it adds to the stress because now your mom's stressing for you. It's just like, okay, now I've just doubled the stress because now your mom's going, oh my God, are you okay? So it's like, okay, that didn't help. So yeah, it's so nice to have that outside perspective. When we first connected, we were talking about you have went to Moab. I've been to Moab to mountain bike. A really kind of a cool place to go. Man. Is there a destination in mind? Is there somewhere that you have in mind? You're kind of maybe what's your next destination to go biking? or maybe it's bucket list, right?
You know what? Yeah, bucket list would be good because first, if it's like, hey, where are you going mountain biking? I'm like, when can I go to Baseline and ride it? I'm in love with their trails. I'm in love with their community, and obviously have a deep emotional attachment to this Legacy Trails project and the trail that's right above it currently, right? And we're maybe talk about that later. But man, you know what? Great question. Bucket list would definitely to go back and experience the mountain biking road trip that I did in 2017, where it was Sedona area and Moab. Yeah. Where it combined it within about a 3.5-1 month period. Nice. Was easily one of the best travel experiences I've ever had in my life, where I just truly felt alive. Obviously the trails out there, the scenery out there is just, it's unbelievable. Sometimes it doesn't even feel real. Like,
it's like being on Mars.
Yeah. Like there was moments where I'm like Captain Ahab, where I'm like got the bike up, I'm taking pictures of the bike with the, the canyons and the monuments in the background. And I'm going like, I don't even know if I want to keep riding my bike. Like I just kind of want to sit here and just take this all in. But
it's scary and awesome at the same time.
It is.
There's a sign somewhere.
Frightening.
I can't remember if we saw this sign or if someone just told us, but there was a sign in Moab that on a trail, it says people better than you have died here. And it's like, okay,
is
cool.
That Porcupine Rim?
I think so. Yeah. It's just like, it's an experience.
Well, you mentioned it, so I do have a funny story. Obviously I didn't die, but there was, I think it was towards the end of the whole enchilada where there's like, there's one point where there's just like this drop off and there's a big sign that says you should probably get off your bike, or maybe it was that sign and I ignored it. And I'm like, no, I think I can like kind of balance through. It's not too skinny, but it's definitely sketchy, and there's a fall off, right? And shouldn't have done it. Like the bike started leaning and I got off the bike, thank goodness, but I had to watch my bike tumble down like a cliff. Wow. Right? And in my mind, this was like the last ride of this very, adventurous trip and ride, and I'm going like, are you kidding me? Like, one, good thing I'm safe, because if that's me going down there, this is a problem, right? But my beloved mountain bike that it's like, recovery mountain bike, I have a very serious attachment to that mountain bike, is now gone. And then the bike and myself was very fortunate that it got caught up in a tree before it had dropped completely off the next ledge, which was gone. Like just a straight drop. Wow. Right. And being stubborn and knowing that, hey, that's my bike. I'm going to go get it. So I
Yeah.
did. I traversed, went down and got it. And then all of a sudden I could, hear people yelling, "Oh, someone has fallen down."
Yeah.
And I'm yelling from kind of the bottom, like, "No, no, no, it's all good. I'm just retrieving my bike," right?
That's
They probably
awesome.
think I'm crazy. And here I am struggling to get this bike up. And eventually I'm up and checking the bike, and the frame's not cracked. Like,
Nice.
levers were bent, and like a few other things were broken. But finished the whole enchilada. I managed to ride. It couldn't change gears, but I managed to ride the bike down, finish the trip, and I just felt so alive, right? And
It's so
people
good.
that were in and around there were like, "Oh my god, who is this guy? Like, he's crazy."
But you know what? You're in good company because there's a lot of like crazy human beings out there. When we were out there, because we were taking our time and just absorbing everything because it was like so out of my comfort zone to some degree, and there was this one point where you're coming down and it's super narrow, but then it's a really tight switchback, and then you got to go back this way. And me and my buddy are like, okay, like getting off the bike when needed and stuff like that. And there's these guys when they turn this, like when they did the switchback, and now they're launching, they're jumping, and I'm like, where? Like if you go right, like you're going down a cliff. Like why are you using this point to jump? And so we're just watching, going like, okay, I don't know if we're gonna be part of a recovery here. So they were fine. They did this, and then we're just like, holy shit, this is insane. And then this guy with a fixie bike with a stereo attached to the back of his bike without a shirt on just comes trotting along and like, hey, how's it going? Passes us and keeps going. And I'm just like,
Unreal.
wow,
I
there's
know.
so it's a cool place to go for sure. And
Yeah,
yeah,
can't wait to go
a lot of
back.
inspiring human beings. What else do we need to know? I hope I asked a lot of questions because I think what you're doing is amazing. When you think about your story, the story of the foundation, what else do people need to know about you guys?
Vinyl.
Yeah. So you guys, so I was looking at that on one of your videos. You talk about the passion, and then you do show a clip of your dad. You have your dad's record player stereo. Is that correct? So
Yeah.
talk about what I love about you is you seem to be when you're passionate about something, you kind of go to the extreme. Is that fair to say?
I would say so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
for
let's
sure.
talk vinyl for a
Vinyl's
second.
definitely one of them. So I'm glad we did get this in the conversation,
Yeah,
because
for sure, man.
sometimes there's a running joke in our foundation, or people will ask one of our team members, like, I don't really understand the vinyl connection, or I don't really understand, like, I use a lot of creative space clips when connecting. I've talked about connecting the dots and the stars, right? And this, destiny and purpose. So sometimes we can be a bit unpredictable with some of our content, and it has come up a few times, like, why vinyl? What's the connection to vinyl?
Yeah.
And we have talked about it throughout the years of our foundation, but it just gets lost in the feed of some Instagram write-ups, right? But vinyl is a huge part of the story of the WoodridgeMTB Trail Support Foundation, right? And the reason being was it was another way to kind of honor my dad, and he was a big music collector, but listening to vinyl brought a ton of inspiration and energy into my mind when was thinking of direction, or what could we do next creatively, like, ooh, maybe to this riff or that lyric, could have some bike footage and integrate it into the foundation's creative side of things. And once that started, it was also like, oh wow, like, we've now made some friends through supporting these bands that we love through vinyl purchases and communicating with them and telling them a little bit about our foundation. But I would say the most important connection, and where it's relatable, is the inspiration and the energy that we get from listening to an album from start to finish. You and I talked about this while having coffee, just how great it is to listen to an album from start to finish, like, listen and hear this story develop, or how is this album relatable to you, whether it's a riff change, the energy you feel, or, the lyrics of a song. Like, what do you feel? Not what do you think about this song? What do you feel? And I believe vinyl is that pure form of music where you can get just a enormous amount of energy and feeling from it. And even prior to, starting the fundraising idea, like, I was listening to my father's vinyl, and then, as you start collecting vinyl, well, you're going to collect more. So it was growing this family vinyl collection, right? And yeah, you're right. When kind of I go all in, well, I was probably at Recordland 2-3 days a week, and, buying vinyl online at least once a week, right? And growing this vinyl collection. But the vinyl connection to, I guess, my own personal journey, the relatability to the foundation is incredibly strong. We do talk about it from time to time. We'll, share, here's, the most listened to albums of the year. I'll share creative pictures of the album art into the foundation, and it all ties into inspiration, right? The energy that we get, like listening to an album, by the end of it, sometimes you're like, I feel great. That's good for your mental health, right?
Totally.
The feeling, there's a lot of musicians that'll say, like, music is the rhythm of the soul. Well, like, providing some, energy and healing and, just a good feeling in and around your soul, well, that's good. It's good for your physical health, and it's good for your mental health. So vinyl is a huge part of our organization, and it's hard to explain that sometimes through social media, but it's just something we have a lot of fun with. And, being on a podcast to talk about that is great. It's because you can kind of explain it in detail. This is why. Yeah. Right.
What I love about vinyl too is you have to sit down to listen to it. It's not, you can't listen to it while you're driving. Like, it takes some effort to sit and listen to a record. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like you were talking about, like, creating the space that you've created to almost like meditate while you listen to the music.
An album. Yeah, like obviously I have a very emotional attachment to my dad's record player and all the stereo equipment that is with it, right? And yeah, I do. I have a kind of like a an energy spot or safe place, or places like solitude that I've set up some things that are very meaningful for me towards the goal of the Legacy Trails project.
Yeah.
And the vinyl, stereo, and just sit on the floor and just kind of, attempt to meditate.
Yeah.
I'm not good at meditating,
No.
but while listening to music, right? And I draw energy, I draw inspiration from it. Sometimes I'll just, a certain lyric or a certain riff or a certain song will be like, oh man, I can relate to that. And that, I could connect here, in leadership, or, in something towards, Legacy Trails project, right? Or I could, as a team, we could, film this, right? That, has a message of, something related to mental health or something related to recovery through creative imagery to that song. And then, at that point of the riff, I could get some GoPro riding footage, or, ooh, that'd be a good one to, James falling off his bike and going to a tree, right? And then, picking myself up and continuing to move forward. Like, it really is. And you can probably tell in my voice, right? This is stuff that brings passion.
Totally.
And when you have, a cause that has passion and a team that has passion, you're increasing your odds of, success on how you see success, right?
Absolutely.
So,
So I'd like to end it with this, if it's okay with you. You mentioned your dad a lot, and he's obviously, it was someone that you were very close with. What is something that you would like for people to know about him?
Oh man, great question. He loved people. Loved getting to know people. He was very compassionate. He was very curious. Incredibly supportive. Like, just heart on his sleeve guy. And like me, had to make, some changes. At certain points, where life had to change for the better, and just a very resilient individual when you put his mind to something. And,
Yeah.
you know, obviously I've talked about it earlier in the podcast, this connection of a father's son in recovery at the same time, right? I know that, like, I have, you know, sometimes feel his presence, or, you know, believe that, you know, our loved ones are still with us. And I know, looking down, he'd be extremely proud of everyone involved in you know, this cause, our team, you know, the people that have, you know, put in their heart towards the Legacy Trails project. He would just be so proud, right? Like, you know, and yeah, he was a very, very special individual. And, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of people that might listen to this podcast that have lost a loved one, right? You know, like it's extremely difficult, right? And I think if we take a moment and recognize that, you know, our loved ones are still with us, right? It can lead to some pretty incredible and inspirational things, and, you know, feel that they're always, you know, with us and helping us along the way. And my dad believed in that as well. I won't go into too much detail because it is far too difficult to talk about. But my dad, like me, right, and I maybe got this from my dad and from a letter that we were to read after he had passed, right? He believed in eternity, and that he was eternal, and that, you know, his soul, and, you know, will always shine in around our family. And, you know, he you know, told us, like, don't grieve, right? Like, I'm always with you. Like, I'm eternal. And, you know, to me, see, to deep personal connection to this Legacy Trails project.
Yeah.
And, you know, that bench is, you know, my symbol of, like, him being right about that. You know what I mean?
No, I love
It's just, maybe he wasn't wrong.
that. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. But yeah, it's just a special individual, man. I miss him for sure.
I really appreciate you coming in and sharing your story. I'm glad that our mutual friend Don connected us.
What a great guy. Yeah.
Such a great human. Thanks, man.
I really appreciate the opportunity. That was excellent. So
awesome. Okay.
thanks, man.
Take care.
Appreciate it.